Hey everyone, and welcome to the AI Academics Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lennart Nacke, and this is the show where my co-host VUGAR and I geek out about the latest AI developments without getting too scientific. We want to be your spot for AI insights that actually matter to your daily life as an academic. So grab a coffee, tune in, and let's chat about why AI isn't the job-stealing monster that everyone thinks it is.
And we're back live with our recording. So very excited to have VUGAR back here. We decided that we wanted to do a live recording of our AI Academics podcast. We're now going into episode 4, which is exciting for us that we've been managing to get together again to talk about some of the recent developments of AI and what we can do with AI as we are navigating the tools that are coming out and the different AI techniques that are available to us. And so we're both very excited to talk about that today. We will cover in today's episode a couple of items related to how our writing changes, a tool that I discovered that's quite useful for writing online and that can help us visualize some of our thoughts. And we've used it for social media. And then also tying this idea of writing back to a recent study that we've done where we looked at the impact of writing on academic reviewing and things like that. I do think it is one of those moments where we are quite excited to think about that. VUGAR, how have you been? Glad to welcome you
Hey,
back.
Lennart, it's really great to be back again talking with you. And as you said, I am personally, I think we are both are really excited in the last 2 years talking about AI development, different AI tools, and also, of course, how we talked a lot how we can include and integrate these AI tools into our workflow in an ethical and also efficient manner. That was always our goal, and still it is, and we always try our best to explain these tools for the greater public, and most of the times just free of anything, just we like to use them and we explain how to use them. And I'm really excited to be back, Lennart. Let's start.
Yeah. And remember when we started, I was just like, oh, this is awkward. We haven't done this before. We haven't gone live in a while. So
I am
it feels a little
excited
bit
a
like,
bit.
okay, this is getting a little rusty. I'm coming off of the end of, it's not quite over yet, but the end of a very busy term. I've been teaching 2 classes with more than 60 students in each of the classes. And so it's definitely been a busy time here. And of course, we've been excited with the work that we've done with our webinar. Black Friday is about to come. So if you're tuning in, stay tuned. We'll have a little bit of a Black Friday goodie coming for you later in today's podcast. We're excited to share that with you. But before we get started, one of the first things I wanted to talk about here is, of course, this idea of how do I use it? Of course, I'm interested in how can we use AI for academic writing, and there's a lot higher barriers in terms of what is actually useful and what can be done with it. But as I've also played with it quite a bit in terms of how we can use it for the world of social media writing. So for that specifically, I wanted to demo this tool that a lot of people have been, if you've been on LinkedIn recently or been on any social platform, you've seen this kind of take some of these platforms by storm. And I've been playing around with it, and it is a bit repetitive, but it's a really neat way to structure your social media graphics and images. So I wanted to give you a quick rundown of that. So it's called Napkin AI. So if you go to, I think it's napkin.ai, it's a free tool. You can copy and paste your social media posts in there. You can see this was one of the social media posts I posted recently. Here's another post I posted. Actually, this one is another post I posted. And then all you have to do is you select the post that you have, and then you click on this little magic button here. If we scroll down, it has a little bit of an effect. And then it gives you different pre-made graphics, I'd say, to choose from, right? So it's a neat thing. I've seen it on some of the bigger accounts before, and I was like, this all kind of looks similar. So you already get like a hunch of either there's a new graphic tool out there. And so I was trying to find the templates in Canva, which is usually where people go, right? There's so many really nice templates in Canva that you can use for your social media graphic, but it looks a little bit too simple for Canva. So it has this amateurish style. And so it took me a while to actually find the tool. And then I saw that it's free. I was like, okay, let's sit up and see what we can do here with that tool and what it gives us. And so it is quite a neat way to put something you've written, like some of your social media stuff, into a tool that gives you an overview of sorts. And not all of these are super useful. And as some people in the comments of these posts have noted, it can be super repetitive, as in like the graphics that it uses and the way that it designs stuff. Like, for example, this one with a little digging hole, like that's something I've definitely seen a couple of times, and it's not a great visualization, but it's like a nice way to describe that there is a gap of things or that something is missing. But I really do think it's a neat way of creating like funnels and having these overviews. Everything can be displayed as a funnel. You go from something very specific to something simpler and whatnot. So I just thought it was like a neat little thing. Takes a lot of extra work out of the social media part of your business. If you're like us, building a business on social media on the side while you're also being an academic, this is obviously part of what we do. So there's a little bit of a look behind the scenes, but I do think it's definitely become quite popular, and a lot of people are using, a lot of people are interested in what can we do with it and how can we leverage all of that stuff. So I thought it was just a neat thing to share that with everyone and be like, yeah, okay, this is how you can quickly create these images. And they may not be great, but as you're posting anything on social media, you need some sort of infographic to work with it. And this is just like a nice, fast way to get some of these infographics. None of them are as good as if you actually sit down and create an infographic in Miro or Figma, or if you're using, I use Excalibur as well. And there's like a whole different thing that I could talk about that I'm not going to talk about here, how you can combine AI and Excalibur and create like really nice flowcharts. But yeah, for today, I think this is like a nice way to look at that overview between those different, or what's possible with these different graphics.
That's
What do
really
you think?
interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting tool. Actually, you told me for the first time about this tool to me and we discussed it. And that we have one comment already saying that it is better Canva. I
I don't think
personally
it's better than Canva, to be honest. I think there's a place for Canva, right? Like it makes a lot of stuff very easy. But I think if you're not into graphic design and you just need something quickly, this is, I think, a really nice, quick way to get something. But of course, with a repetitive nature, who knows where they're going to go? Obviously, this is all templates and they're just parsing the text and putting it into templates. So we're still far away from generative AI that will actually take a text, think about it, put it in a diagram. I think that's a big thing that we're currently
that is
missing. This is
AGI.
a step in that. Yeah, I don't know if it's AGI, but it's a step in that direction. I think it'd be really neat to see that, because we've seen image generation and it's hit or miss, but it's getting better. And specifically, if you're following Flux Pro development, like Flux Pro is absolutely excellent when it comes to developing these generated images, and it starts to look really realistic. If you're looking at HeyGen, we could be HeyGen avatars right now. You wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. They're so realistic, right? So I think we're missing that when it comes to infographics. And so I think infographics is one of those, if any entrepreneur is listening right now thinking like, there might be a market, this is definitely a market specifically for academics, where I think we're really missing cool tools that are allowing us to create infographics or explainer diagrams or things like that quickly, and then also accurately, right? Accuracy is a little bit, these are okay for social media. You wouldn't put those in an academic paper because you wouldn't be able to look at the solidness of how that works, right?
Yeah, because I know that there are, so of course, not in law, which I am in.
Yeah.
So we don't have any infographics or anything. We just have very simple, boring letters, boring text in our books. And sometimes maybe we can use it. But in many fields, like I think physics and I don't know, mathematics maybe, or maybe chemistry, in these fields, this tool could be very useful, because I know that many people spend quite some time to come up to design any simple infographic, any simple, let's say, kind of form which is required for his or her research. And I think this could be helpful. So, by the way, we have to mention that this tool is totally free and we are not affiliated in any form. And we wanted just to talk about this as a kind of, we always like to include a new AI tool in our talks. And this is exactly the part that you covered. That this is really interesting. I will definitely dive into it, because it could be even useful for my social media accounts as well, because sometimes I use Claude AI to design, I think we talked about it, to design these tables. It can also design these Mermaid forms for your, based on your text. Now, having specifically dedicated tool for this purpose could be really useful. I will definitely. So I haven't used it yet, but I will, Lennart.
Yeah, I think there was a question that just came in, what the topic and the scope of discussion is today. So if you're tuning in a little late and you haven't seen our little intro at the beginning, so of course the first part here we were just discussing some of these steps that are happening in terms of how can we translate words into these diagramming tools. But as we're going into the second part of today's podcast, we also wanted to comment on what is happening with our ability to write. So let me comment on this first as we're looking through these tools as they're developing, and our friend Elman has shared that there is also a tool that he saw at a conference that's worth trying. So we'll definitely try this out, Diagrammer GPT. So that is definitely something I'm going to put on my list. I'm excited to give that a shot. And so clearly we're interested in how can we use these tools to create better visual diagrams. But then we also have to ask ourselves, one of the things that I just came up with was this: if we are now creating these diagrams automatically, like a large part for me when I create like a scientific diagram or something like that, this actually makes me understand the study better. That makes me understand the process better. It is actually a learning tool in the same way that writing is a learning tool for thinking. And you've heard we talk about this a lot on social media, that writing is thinking and the storytelling is the engine that helps you build a better understanding of complex concepts. And so I think this is an interesting perspective that brings us to a recent essay from Paul Graham, who is Silicon Valley's writers guy, I'd say, right? Is definitely a popular writer. He's definitely quoted a lot on social media with his essays. And so VUGAR really found that this essay had a big impact
Yeah.
on him. So
It
maybe
was
you want to share
viral.
some of that. Yeah.
It really went viral. So basically, in this article, I think we can link that in our podcast. In the show notes, we can link that. And also, if you are watching on YouTube, we can put that in the description, the link to this article.
Yeah.
And so basically, it says that he claims that the writing will disappear. And in a broad sense. Now, so I am a PhD researcher, almost finalizing my research now. And you are professing what is right, writing means better than me for sure. And I personally struggled a lot because for my research, writing part was and still is the most difficult part because you are engaging yourself actively into something. So reading and listening, so just accepting that is passive learning. And when you write, that comes from you, that is your activity, and you principally spend more energy. You have to come up. I think, but I believe that the writing could be developed, but you have to have this basic in you in order to write. I know a lot of people, many people cannot simply write simple sentences. Many people are very good at speaking, so with the narrative skills, but writing is totally different thing, which requires us to organize all our thoughts and to put in a meaningful structure. And that is difficult. That is really difficult. And many of the writers, students, struggle with this. I observed that. I think you in your class can give your own experience about your students, maybe,
Yeah.
that writing is really the most difficult part of any kind of activity, whether it is being student at university or whether you are a copywriter or you are writing blog post or you are posting on social media. So writing is always, difficult one.
Yeah.
And he claims that because of the AI, this skill might disappear because when we delegate our all tasks to AI tools like ChatGPT, Claude AI, Gemini, or whatever comes next, I don't know. And then we just copy paste the text, and by some time, our skills to write ourselves might disappear because we don't write anymore. We just put couple of unlinked, maybe couple of words or sentences together and ask AI to come up something based on this text. So that is the main concern of this article. But I believe that writing will not disappear as long as humanity exists. There will always be someone, but maybe it will decrease. I don't know. Maybe the whole meaning of all the researches that we are doing will be vanished in the future. I don't know, because what I am doing in 4 years, maybe AI will do that in a couple of days, if not hours. And because with all these huge computing power and the ability to handle the massive amount of knowledge at the same time, so of course no human brain could be compared. But one thing still we can proud as human beings is creativity and creative thinking and critical thinking, which is AI cannot do for now. For now, we have to mention that for now, because I believe that AI will do that as well. And if AI starts to do that, AI for sure will do better than the humans, most of the human beings, at least. But for now, yeah, this is a legit concern. This is a really legit concern from Paul Graham. I think you already put the link and also this QR code, yeah, to scan. So that's basically my understanding from the writing. I really like writing, to be honest. And my wife always, when it comes to my room, sees me that I'm always typing something. So I am in our house, I am famous with my typing. I really like it. And I think there will be always people who will stay like that, irrespective of which kind of tools we are going to have. There will be people, but most maybe will disappear. So 100%, I do not agree that writing will disappear.
No.
100%, but it will decrease considerably. That's my point, I would claim. Yeah.
I like your point about this. I do think the point that Paul Graham makes about real writing being actually quite difficult, because you have to clearly think about the thing you're going to write. And a lot of the times we have a lot of pressure exerted upon us to get the writing done. So we have that extra difficulty. I think it's an interesting, there's an interesting take in that, because yes, there's less pressure because a lot of it is done by AI, and there's a lot of writing that can be farmed off to AI. But there are ways of writing that cannot be farmed off to AI, where you have to do some sort of reflection. And specifically in academia, we have to have a critical reflection on the results that we're producing, as well as overall synthesizing things with our knowledge of the literature. So yes, we've seen a lot of tools, and we discussed those in our research tools webinar. So there've been quite a few tools that make it easier to get to that point. There are quite a few tools that can help alleviate some of the concerns that we might have in writing simple sentences, or help us pick better phrasings or whatnot. But I don't think for academics or people that do this professionally, that have a professional tie into writing, that writing will disappear. This is an interesting, I do think the divide is real, that there's an interesting divide between people that can write and have learned to write pre-AI and people that have not. And there's also a comment that just came in from Dr. Nasser that said they're disagreeing with that article. While Gen AI can assist in avoiding basic mistakes, creative writing and contextually appropriate content require more than just AI support. These tasks demand human creativity, insight, and understanding that AI alone cannot fully provide, which is an interesting take on the topic. I do think that to a degree, you'd be surprised in how AI is doing with some creative writing if fed the proper prompts. And there are story tools out there. I forgot the name, but there's 2 or 3 story tools that creative writers can use, where they start with a plot and they start working through that plot. The problem is the averaging that happens with Gen AI technology, that it always averages to the next most likely thing to happen. So I think it takes maybe away a little bit from that human creativity that you would all otherwise put into place. But as VUGAR has mentioned, as these tools evolve, people will put in some of these necessary things to put it off track and give it a little bit more of something here and something there. So again, if we're using this as an assistant that comes in and gives us some ideas of how we can improve these bits and pieces, and as long as the glue that connects those pieces are still comes from us as humans, I think that's a really interesting way to look at this, because we can provide that glue and we should still provide that glue. There may be less of an ability to provide that glue. I think this is maybe the new skill for writers to learn, to become better editors as well as writers. So I think it's a lot less grunt writing, which all of us that have written like longer manuscripts know this is grunt writing at the beginning, when you're just getting the dirty out, you're just getting everything on paper, and then you're trying to formalize it in a way. So it helps you get some of that rough stuff into shape, maybe together with some brainstorming and other things. It might also, the counter argument here could be that it locks you in a certain direction. It brings you in that direction and might make it a little bit more difficult for you to get out of those proven tracks. But I do think the new skill for us to learn is to provide that perspective and glue that together with that perspective, so that we can say, okay, we'll take that input, we'll take some of these elements that make it a little bit easier for us to write and to create things, but we still have to exercise that critical thinking bit. You might have seen, I've had this post about ChatGPT will die, which also went completely nuts, partially because of the hook, where I'm just like, no, everything's going to disappear. But of course, that was like a hook to make things more interesting here. But the idea essentially being that I do think you still need to have those skills that are underlying stuff. Sure, a lot of AI influencers might disagree with that and say, no, AI is just going to take over. AGI is going to be the thing. Sure, I get your point, but I do think underlying there is a skill set, an important skill set that we can leverage to make this more interesting. And we do need to refine that skill set. There's a lot of facilitation, a lot of improvement of speed, but we do have to work on those skills, those gluing skills that help us understand how we can make sense out of the AI bits and pieces. There's another question, maybe you want to take that, VUGAR, which was about using AI to modify the tone of writing and providing rehearsal explanation for ideas. I certainly have a take on that, but maybe you have a take on how you do that.
Yeah, I think
You're right.
I think we both talked about it earlier in our
Yeah.
previous, but this is the way I used many AI tools many times. That, for example, Claude AI, you can create a simple project and you can give it very custom instructions as well as this context knowledge base. So now it is your replication, it's second you, basically. Of course, not 100%.
No.
Even if when it writes, I always edit. And I explained in one of my, I think in our previous sessions, that when I come up one idea, I first type everything. If I don't have enough time to write, I dictate simply on a Word file that text, and then take this very rough draft, put it on the Claude AI, but it is not academic text.
Yeah.
I do this many times, for example, for my Medium articles or similar stuff on social media, and then ask this project that I already built to write this very rough draft text in a tone that I would write. So that is so this is doable. But of course, the original text comes from me. So I do not open the Claude AI and I say, please write an article about something.
No.
So this is 100% AI. But the smart way of using AI to polish the text you have written, at least the very first rough draft you have.
Yeah.
That is the right way, I believe, to use these AI, Claude AI, ChatGPT, and all others.
Yeah, can we talk about that for a second? I think specifically this idea of using projects or using the custom GPTs. I think custom GPTs were the first that came out. Then Claude introduced projects, Gemini introduced gems, and Perplexity now has, I think they're called spaces. It's all the same concept, essentially. You're providing an environment that gives some custom instructions for the AI to deliver answers to you. And I find those super helpful. Those are actually the one thing that really makes those AIs or the generative LLMs that we're working with here make really useful for a specific task, because you can then set that context for the task. I think to a degree, yes, you can of course instruct it. And the interesting thing that we have to keep in mind there, when we're instructing for things like tone of voice, modification of style, you might have seen this in my newsletter as well, where I talked about how to modify writing style, and I actually went through the different writing registers. So first of all, you have to know that writing registers exist. You have to know how to ask for writing registers, and then you have to feed it some examples of those, right? So this is all knowledge about language that you need to bring to the language model to actually improve it. And in a similar way, I think having a very specific understanding of what you're looking for, and then providing all of those contextualized prompts in a way that then sits in a project or sits in a custom GPT or sits in a space or whatever they're called, and being then readily accessible for when you do it again. So something like you could build a peer reviewer AI, and we've certainly done it. And I might actually make some of those things available in my newsletter as well for people that want to use that. You can then feed it a PDF, because most of the AIs can process PDFs, and then you get some initial criticism. How cool is that to get somebody to provide additional perspective? And in a similar way, you can create a brainstormer one that already knows these are the contexts in your field within which you're actually making these things work. So now you can add that brainstorming bit to certain things. So I think to a degree, you're right, VUGAR, when you're saying these things can work in different parts. I don't think there is always a specific part. You can use it as a jumping off point in brainstorming. Don't lock yourself in and don't only use those ideas, but use it as a thing to get started. You can use them in between as an editing tool, and you can use them towards the end to refine certain words. I have a big love for the Hemingway editor, specifically those AI tools. One of my favorite tools is the AI-based thesaurus, where essentially you give it multiple words and it creates thesaurus style different answers for that. It's so powerful, much quicker than looking it up in your own thesaurus. And yeah, it really is super helpful or something like that. So you can use these tools, but I think at the end of the day, you're still having to do a little bit of tooling and engineering. I've never had an output that came just from the AI generation that I then copied and pasted and used just one-on-one, even for social media, which is the easiest kind of writing you can do. There recently was a study done that said, who are the professionals that are adopting Gen AI in their workflow? And no surprise, marketing people were the first, because they have to write a lot of punchy copy, and it's really easy to train an AI to write punchy copy. If you see any of my social media posts, they've all been trained with some of that punchy copy, and makes it really easy for it to generate things that are exciting. But again, it's never, the first output is never the one I use. It's never good enough. You always have to go in. And I recently learned a little bit more about rhetoric, and going beyond what I already knew, which is alliteration and tricolon. Those are some of the most important figures. You start with the same sound at the beginning or the same letter at the beginning. You do sets of 3 and things like that. But there's more powerful things, like an antithesis is found in almost every hook, right? Like looking for these rhetorical figures and helping you understand, hey, let's apply some of our knowledge about rhetoric to this AI to make this a little bit more interesting. Is really one of the key unlocks. Here we're using another one of those marketing terms, unlocks, whatever. It's one of those things you can do that actually makes the faces really good. Anyways, this was my rant about that.
We have another comment. That article I already read from that Reza sent. This is the AI over reliance. It's about AI over. I think we can talk about in our upcoming.
Next
that
episode.
Could be a totally
Reza,
different.
We'll pick this one up specifically for an episode, I think.
That could be a totally separate session, because that is a very huge topic, and this article is very well written. I don't want to just mention it very quickly. We can dedicate at least half of one of our upcoming sessions specifically. So Reza, many thanks for your mentioning this one. We will definitely consider that.
Yeah. I think it's
so back into this article, maybe Lennart.
Yeah. I'm even thinking like at some point we should get Reza as a guest, because he's got a lot of good thoughts about AI stuff. So maybe we'll start taking guests in some of the future episodes. I know a couple of people that would actually be really nice to provide some thoughts and some ideas about this stuff. It doesn't always need to be just the two of us talking, as much as we enjoy that.
Great, exactly. With great pleasure, that would be. So coming back to this article, I think we can now finalize it for the sake of today's session. In the end, the author said that the writing will be there always with the smart people, but only those who choose to be, who choose to write, who
Yeah.
choose to continue writing. I agree with this statement right in the end there, because
Mm.
yeah, if you really want to write yourself without any help, you can do that, you can learn that. And of course, as I said, you have to have any intention for that. Because but most of the students that I also met, they just want to do their assignment, their essay as fast as possible, because now we are this, because of these shorts on TikTok and all YouTubes, now we are used to do everything extremely fast. We don't
Uh,
have time for anything, but we are always in a hurry to do more things in a limited period of time. That is a difficult thing, I agree, but writing needs time. Writing takes time, and you develop these writing skills in very long years. It cannot be developed in 1 year, in 2 years. So I am writing basically maybe 15 years. You are doing that more than that, obviously. So it takes time. And who wants to dedicate that much time? Because time is a value. The people like us will continue to do that. But I think most of the people will not invest that much time. And saying that, if AI can do that, why I would do that? And I would dedicate so much time to do that, while I can spend this time doing something else or spend with my family. So that is the issue, because writing takes enormous times. It's about time, it's about value. I would say it's about asset, that the
yeah.
most valuable asset you have. So it's a bit complicated. And writing, but I think we had a, so Dr. Nasser said about, talked about creativity, but I believe
Mhm.
when the AI, any AI tool, I don't know whichever one, the chat GPT, Claude, Gemini, if they start think in a way that we as human beings do, and also when they manage to generate conscience, to create conscience, and after having this conscience, they will have enough creativity, which will be able to compete with our creativity as human beings.
Mhm.
So that will come, and maybe we will be able to see that very soon. And with this pace that now AI tools developing, I think we will definitely see that. And it is about conscience. When AI will have conscience, which I believe that it will develop conscience by time, and after that, this creativity will be attached to it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's interesting with what Elman said earlier about writing without AI will feel like driving on a manual stick, rare and for enthusiasts. I think there's something to that, that as tools change and the standards change with which we interact, it will definitely make things, yeah, it will give rise to a new set of skills and understanding. I still love driving stick and it comes back. So like understanding that and how that works I think is definitely great. And sometimes I do miss it when I'm just driving on an automatic car, right? So there's definitely things for both. And I think the enthusiasm is a big part of it, and you should keep that. And it does make some things better. But I think there's also a huge challenges. And here just a giant comments. Maybe I'll read that one because it doesn't even fit in here. But this was about being interested in AI's powerful potential to unlock creative mental exercise provisions about equations and formulate them into a tangible, applicable format. So first of all, I don't think that is always possible. I do think equations and math are still complex and hard for Gen AI to do. It's not trained on that. So you almost need to train a custom model to work that in there. And this person was giving an example. I have a concept about formulating cell differential equations depending on morphogen presented within a given matrix and the diffusion gradient. Interestingly, my equation grasp AI is interested, and we could adjust my equation and formulate a real hypothetical equation that controls cell differentiation. So this is a nice experience report here where it has actually worked out. And I think if you're using it in that capacity as a tool that spawns some form of creative sparring partner or intellectual sparring partner that helps you come up with a better equation or with a different view of looking at things, I think that's a fantastic way to implement that. I don't think that is always a given. I do think we have to be a little bit careful, specifically when we're going into the realm of more complex math, to trust the output and to work that output. But as with any output, if you're in an academic setting, you can never just run with it. That will never just be okay. And that's the same with any kind of tool that you're using, even if you're using some sort of charting tool. If you're working with R or other things, I think these days we've become very reliant on tools for statistics, right? And we just blindly trust that's okay. But as any statisticians in the audience will tell us, a lot of the times we need to check our assumptions before we run a certain test. But I can easily quote you at least 50 papers that have done statistics. It's some questionable way, not necessarily wrong, but something where you'd be like, this is really the way that you should be doing this. So I think it's like an interesting thing in terms of skills to rethink how are our skills valuable and how can we make the best use of our skills within this very complex way of how AI is using stuff. And Alman again commented on that it's interesting to compare how writers think about AI versus software engineers. I think it's a great point because a lot of this actually comes from the world of software engineering, right? Every software engineer he knows is very happy about using AI and doesn't want to come back. And I do think that probably holds true for a lot of people in the technical profession. I have definitely worked with a lot of computer science students where writing is not the main thing for them to express themselves. It's just a necessary tool that they have to use to put some of the ideas across. And so this is an interesting thing to think about that mindset and that customer base where they're used to a different kind of thinking, as Elman says here, that is different from writing, and they might not necessarily have the skills. And I think an interesting direction that we see with some of the AI tools is that, yes, it can make some of the coders better writers, but it can also make some of our writers better coders, right? There is this interesting, I think, leveling of skills that we can see happening that it can definitely facilitate that and make that easier. And Dr. Nacke comments here as well. AI can be incredibly helpful for writing easily and efficiently. However, if you're a specialist in a particular topic, you'll notice that AI's writing can feel limited or lacking depth. I think that's a nice way of putting it. This is also something that we've discussed in depth in our AI research tools webinar, which now I'm putting up the link here. So if you want to, there it is up here. If you want to scan that link, this will actually give you an early access to our Black Friday discount. We're making it available for the biggest discount we've had so far, 40% off. So if you're interested in that, it's a very powerful way to cut your stress in half with these research tools. Now, if you click on that QR code on the bottom, it won't have the coupon auto applied. So make sure to scan the one on the top here that has the coupon applied and makes this a bit easier. But that will essentially help you with some of these AI research tools and give you a little bit of a better overview there. So hopefully that's helpful to you. VUGAR and I spend a lot of time doing that. And we're actually looking to upgrading it very soon. And we'll be excited to make that available to anyone that's purchased the AI research tools in the past. We'll make that update available for free.
So basically that means if you purchase with a discount code, you will save a lot with our upcoming new webinar, because we did that. Actually, it's not very old, but the AI environment moves so fast, and
Yeah.
it's only 6 months, but it's still actual. And we covered also, you covered very, I would say, the amazing tactics. I personally learned in that webinar a lot from you, Lennart.
Even about ethics, right? Like some of the ethical problems, they stay no matter what, right? So
exactly.
it was important to talk about that. Yeah.
And we covered together 15 different AI tools for different tasks, for different academic tasks there. And I think that could be useful for many. But I want to conclude my today's,
let's wrap it up.
The overall approach that what we do in our today's society, the main driving principle is profit maximization.
Mhm.
And we do everything based on this. And in all countries, in Europe, in Canada, in United States, Australia, all developed countries, and the developing countries are trying to catch up with those. The one main principle is profit maximization. And as long as we are attached to this principle, we are maintaining this principle, so we will need more development, more AI, more everything, always more and more, because we never accept getting smaller each year. So I have never seen any company or any country is happily declaring that next year our GPT will not increase but decrease, and we are very happy about it. No country has ever mentioned it, because the number of the population is growing, and respectively the GDP and also the other things should grow in order to achieve the welfare that we may maintain for ourselves. And when we apply this principle, yes, AI will be helpful. And I understand the position of Elman. By the way, Elman, you should come to our one of the upcoming sessions. You are very welcome. You know that.
Yes.
And I agree. I see your point that no one wants to go back, but writing is something attached to human being naturally, and I think it will be always there, irrespective what kind of development we will have. For me, these AI tools are really powerful assistants. I cannot explain how I am happy today that I have this kind of so powerful assistant,
Yeah.
especially, for example, I think we will dedicate totally independent session to the Claude's projects, because I really love it. It is perfect for analyzing any kind of document. Of course, it shouldn't replace us. But if we say that, no, our only target is profit maximization and only increase, and we need AI to do that for us, so that will be a different story. And in that case, we may lose many things as human beings that we have today. I don't know how it will develop, but this is my, let's say, concluding remarks, that we are human beings, sensible creatures, that we need to be like this, because it's our distinctive feature. But we are now building something very powerful. And I think for the first time in the history of the humanity, it will be a very huge rival to the human beings' critical thinking. And as I said, when that conscience is there, it will have better creativity and critical thinking than us. I am almost 100% sure about it, because the development I see now, I have this kind of sense. And I watched some good documentaries, some scientists, which is now busy with actually, there was a nice project, the Brain Project in Europe, and many countries were part of that. And they are claiming that if any mechanism handling information is capable of creating conscience. So what AI is doing is handling massive amount of knowledge. And they claim that it's a matter of a time these AI tools will come up with the conscience. And when they have this conscience, they will have this creativity and also the critical thinking. And I believe we will see that, Leonard. So that's today's my final remarks.
That'll be interesting. I will wait with you for that moment and then we'll see how it's getting there and if it's getting there. Until then, I would say stay curious, stay careful, and keep the interest in these tools and use them to your advantage. Do not be afraid. Be intellectually curious and careful, and then it will be a very helpful way to enhance your tool set. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be doing this more often. You can find the episode if you're looking on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Just search for the AI Academics, and then you can tune in our AI Academics podcast. Now, this was a live recording, so we'll have to do some cleaning and editing after, but it should go live at the end of this week. We're excited for you to be part of this. Thank you very much, and see you then. Goodbye, everyone.